Okay, so to demo XLOOKUP, I'm going to be using this data, and it is domestic US flights and the prices for 3 different classes of travel, so economy, premium and business. So I'm just going to jump into the first question. It's saying use XLOOKUP to perform a one-way vertical lookup of a business ticket, Kansas City to Philadelphia. So vertical lookup is where we look something up in a column and then we return something from a different column. A horizontal lookup would be looking something up in a row and then returning something from a different row. So the vertical lookup is like a VLOOKUP, horizontal is like HLOOKUP. So we'll start by just inputting the route here. So it's Kansas City to Philadelphia. So I'll just choose that and it is here. And then what we'll type in here is the XLOOKUP. And I can press tab there. Now the lookup value is going to be this route, and the lookup array is where we're going to find that. And so you'll note actually this terminology is similar to the match function where we have a lookup value and a lookup array. But then we need to choose a return array, and this is actually where we're going to find the result that we're interested in, which is the ticket price. And so that here is going to be the business ticket prices. And so this is the equivalent of the array at the start of an index function. Now, normally with a match function, we'd have to put a 0 for an exact match, but with XLOOKUP, that's actually by default. We do have the option to input a match type. If I press comma twice, then we have an exact match there and a few other types. -1 and 1 we'll be looking at in example 2, and then this 2 wildcard character match we'll be looking at in a later question. So for now, I'm going to leave that blank. I'm going to close the bracket and press enter, and it returns 742. And so it's looked up Kansas City, found it's here, and then it's returned this figure from the return array. So if I move on to question 2, it's asking use XLOOKUP to perform a one-way horizontal lookup of an economy ticket, Las Vegas to Houston. So I'm going to start by picking the class, and so that's economy, and then we'll enter XLOOKUP, tab. The lookup value is economy, then the lookup array will be the economy, premium, business here, and then the return array is Las Vegas to Houston, so that's here. If I close that, it's returning 156, so it's looked up economy, it's found it's here, and it's returned the 156 from the return array. Now question 3, use XLOOKUP to perform a two-way lookup of a premium ticket, Minneapolis to Pittsburgh. Now with index and match, this would have required an index match, so having 2 matches embedded within the index to return the row coordinate and the column coordinate. This in XLOOKUP I think is actually slightly tricky, but I'll start inputting the function and then I'll explain it as we go. So if we firstly choose the route, so that is Minneapolis to Pittsburgh, which is here. And then the class is going to be premium. So we'll choose that. And then I'll start typing out the XLOOKUP. Now, if we take for the lookup value this Minneapolis to Pittsburgh, the lookup array will be this column. And then the return array, normally we would have chosen this column here. But we actually want to be able to look up which class it is. So we can't do that. So what we actually need is to put another XLOOKUP within this. So if I type XLOOKUP tab, this lookup value is going to be premium. The lookup array will be the classes, and then the return array is actually going to be all of these figures. And so this is where it gets slightly complicated. If I close that bracket and then close the bracket of the wider XLOOKUP and press enter, it returns the result 277. And so it's looked up Minneapolis to Pittsburgh, it's found it's here. And then premium is this column, so it's returned that 277. But kind of what's going on here? So the XLOOKUP here is looking up premium, and then it's actually returning all of these figures. And then all of these figures are then used by the first XLOOKUP. So with this selected, if I press F9, you see it actually shows these figures, so 394, 501, 312. So that's these figures all the way down to 277. So what's happened is this second XLOOKUP has actually created an array of figures, which is then used by the first XLOOKUP. So this is actually equivalent to us just selecting these figures and getting the result 277. Now, personally, I find that conceptually a little bit more difficult than index match, but it comes down to the person really. So if I just group these, And then we'll move on to question 4. So this is asking, use XLOOKUP to perform a one-way lookup of a premium ticket on a route beginning with SAN. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to type the word SAN here, and we can see actually from the data there's a few different routes that have SAN in them. So for instance, San Francisco, San Diego, San Jose. Now in the answer, if I type XLOOKUP, the lookup will be SAN. The lookup array will be the routes, and then the return array is going to be the premium ticket prices. If I close the bracket, it's returning an NA, and that's because it doesn't find SAN within this data. There's not actually a cell here which just says SAN. And so firstly, I can go in here, and if that doesn't exist, I can put comma, and then we've got this option, if not found. And I could type in some text here, so I'll do the quotation marks, and then I could put, for instance, not found. If I press enter, when the XLOOKUP doesn't find SAN here, it will just return not found. So I'm going to try this again in question 5, but this time I'm going to use the wildcard match mode. And so what I'm going to put here is SAN, and then I'm going to put XLOOKUP. And now for the lookup value, I select SAN, but then if I use an ampersand and open the quotation marks, this is going to be text. I put the little asterisk or the multiplication sign in here, put another quotation mark, and this acts as a wildcard, and we need the ampersand to join this text to the cell reference. Now, if I put comma in, the lookup array are going to be the routes, and the return array will be the premium ticket. Now it's not enough just to close the brackets here. We're still going to get NA. So what we need to do here is put 2 commas in to move to match mode, and then select this, the wildcard character match. And if I press enter now, we get 501. And so it's looked up SAN with the wildcard and found it's here. We've got San Francisco, and so then it returns the 501. And so it's found the first cell which satisfies the search criteria and then return the result. But what if we wanted to use the same sort of method but to return the price for San Jose to Seattle? Now the example we've just seen, by default we search from the top to the bottom. In question 6 we're actually going to search from the bottom to the top. So question 6 is saying use XLOOKUP to form a one-way lookup using the wildcard SAN to return a premium ticket San Jose to Seattle. And so again, I'm going to put SAN, and then we'll put equals XLOOKUP. And so the lookup value is SAN. We put the ampersand, quotation marks, the asterisk, quotation marks. The lookup array is going to be the routes. Then the return array will be the premium prices. Then we don't need the if found. Match mode, we'll put a 2 for the wildcard. And then here in search mode, we can put last to first. By default, it's first to last. If I put -1, we have search last to first. If I close the bracket, press enter, we get 566. And so it's looked up SAN in here, but it's actually started from the bottom. It's looked upwards and it's found San Jose here, and then returned the 566. So if I just group these now, and then we can move on to the last question. Use XLOOKUP to perform a one-way lookup using the wildcard SAN to return a premium ticket, Nashville to San Antonio. Now, Nashville to San Antonio is here, so it's actually below San Jose to Seattle. And so when we did the previous question, it actually got skipped. And so this time we're going to have to do something slightly different. Again, I'm going to put SAN, and then I'll put XLOOKUP. And the lookup value, firstly, we need to start with the quotation marks, the asterisk quotation marks, then an ampersand. Then we'll select the lookup value, SAN. And then I'm actually going to do the same. And so this is allowing for text before and after. Now the lookup array again will be this. The return array will be the premium prices. And then again, I need to put 2 for the wildcard match. and then this time I'll put a -1 for search last to first. I'll close the bracket and press enter, and we get the result. Now it's worth noting, if I go back into this formula, if I was to actually remove this last search mode, so it didn't by default search last to first, and in fact defaults to first to last, if I press enter, it actually returns 501, and so it returns this San Francisco to Miami. So although we defined this wildcard before and after, it doesn't actually necessarily need to use this before one, because it's actually returned San Francisco. So XLOOKUP has a few different match modes. If I enter an XLOOKUP, and then I press comma a few times to move to match mode, we have 0, exact match, which is what we've used so far, and it's the default setting. We've got 2, which is the wildcard character match, which we've also used. And then we've got this -1, which is exact match or next smaller item, and 1, which is exact match or next larger item. So we're going to be using these two in these examples. Now what we've got here is a tiered rate table, and in fact we use the same data in the match demo. It's users from and users to and price. So it's a product where if the number of users being bought for is between 1 to 10, then the price is $45.99 per user. Then we have 11 to 50, 51 to 250, 251 to 1000. And so for instance here, if we had 100 users, that would fall into this category, and the price we're looking for is $31.99. So we're going to see how we can use XLOOKUP to look up the price when the user figure here doesn't exactly match any of these numbers. So if we start by typing in XLOOKUP, the lookup value will be the 100. And then the lookup array, here we're going to use this first column. And in fact, the question asks us to use a match mode of -1. So the return array will be the price. And then we need to put a couple of commas in, and then the match mode will be this -1 here. If I close the bracket and press enter, then this match mode, -1, is exact match or next smaller item. So with this 100, there's no exact match, but the next smallest item is the 51. And so that's the range, the 51 to 250 that we're interested in. And so it returns that price. Now, question 2 is similar to question 1, except here the data is reversed. So we start with users from 251 to 1000, then we have 51 to 250, then 11 to 50, and 1 to 10. So the question here is asking us to use the match mode of 1. So if I input XLOOKUP, the lookup value will be this 100. The lookup array, this time we want to select this column. The return array will be the price, and then we put a couple of commas in, and the match mode will be the 1, which is an exact match or next larger item. And so here there's no exact match for 100 in this data, and so the next largest item is this 250, which again fits in the right range and returns the right price. And so what you might notice is that actually it doesn't really matter whether this data is ascending or descending. I could have done question 2 the same as question 1 and actually just had the lookup array as users from, and then changed the match mode to -1, and see we get the same result. And that's because we're just interested actually in finding this range. So it doesn't matter whether we're looking for this 51 or this 250.